many watched the whole season? Nice. All right.
Awesome.
Good.
So let's just start at the beginning. Jessica, I know this was your idea. How'd you come up with it?
It came out of a very bad year in my life where I had lost a parent, and then I was getting divorced and sort of had my own like Eddie existential crisis, and just had that feeling that I guess everybody has in their life where like everything seems to fall apart. And I don't know how I got from there to this show, but I was always sort of interested in religion. I grew up in Woodstock, where there's a lot of like very new, lots of sort of social utopian experiments, and I sort of took the emotions I was having and put them in this religion.
And I know you were working with.
Yes, I was working with
Jason.
I was working on Parenthood, and it was my hiatus, and I said, I'm just going to go into a room and write something, and I wrote the pilot. Then I gave it to Jason, and I was very nervous because he was like my sort of I worked for him, and I was such he was one of my heroes of television, and he liked it.
Jason, what was your reaction when she brought this to you?
Well, it was such, a, beautiful script, and really came out such whole cloth that you really got, what you guys, have watched. Those of you, seen the whole season and seen the pilot, is really essentially what it was, the first draft out of that Jess wrote. So I was really drawn to telling a story about faith and doing it in this way. There's a lot of chairs. There's a lot of resistance when we first started to sort of like talk about trying to bring this script out into this marketplace. A lot of resistance to the idea of, doing a show about, a cult, because for whatever reason, people were resistant to that subject matter. But I felt that, from, what Jess had written, I never really thought of it as a show about a cult. I thought about, to me, it was so much about the idea of faith and loss of faith and wanting to believe and family and all of these things done in a tone that I never and quite sort of seen before. And so I was really, really excited to sort of help Jess try to realize the vision that she had when she inspired her to write that very first draft of the show.
How did it end up at Hulu? Why was Hulu the right home for it?
Hulu. I think I don't know if we need them, but Hulu was it's interesting because I went to a panel this morning with David Simon and Tom Fontana, and they were talking about those sort of early days of HBO, and which they were obviously part of with Oz and the Corner, I think, which and well, even pre The Wire though, because the Corner was sort of but they were sort of talking about like HBO before The Sopranos and Sex and the City, and when there was when it was so new. And the idea of like, it was really about what story do you want to tell, and when they were talking about it, I was thinking that is what it felt like when we brought it to Hulu. I mean, it really was. It felt like we were so lucky not only to get to work with Hulu, but to get to work with them at a time when they were branching out and trying to trying to find the thing that was some of these early series that were going to sort of define who they were and what they wanted to do with original programming. And the feeling of when we first got to a chance to sit down with Craig Orwig and his team was that they wanted to conspire with us to tell the story. And they were as passionate about it, I swear to you, as we were. I mean, maybe more passionate at moments where they were just like, we love this so much. So, the feeling of, in wanting to do a show like this with Jess that was a little bit, outside of the box in terms of, subject matter and challenging and we wanted to, sort of dig as deep as we could and push it as far as we could. To have that kind of support at the beginning, and we just knew that this was the place that we wanted, that we wanted to be.
Talk about casting too, because I think the actors brought so much to their roles.
Yeah.
For one, Hugh Dancy, Aaron Paul, Michelle Monaghan. How important was that cast?
Well, I feel so lucky to have that cast because they're totally amazing, and they just sell the world of the show. So. You buy, it's a hard world to buy into, but they do the work. Aaron and Michelle, we had sort of dreamt about and sent the script to, and I've told the story before, but Hugh was doing Hannibal, and
she dreamed about Michelle. I would dream about Aaron.
Yeah.
I dream about Hugh Dancy.
I know. Well, yeah. Now we all dream about it. But then we were having a lot of trouble casting Cal or figuring out who to cast because it's such a hard part. He has to be, charming and sexy, and yet he has to be. You don't want someone who seems like a bad guy right away. He's very, sociopathic, but I don't know. There were so many elements to this character, and then. Hannibal got canceled, and we all sort of thought, like, what about that guy?
It seems to have worked out.
Yeah.
Did the roles change once you put the actors in it?
I would say the one that changed the most was Sarah, because she really brought so much more intensity than I had seen originally on the page, and was so brave, and I think the part. It grew.
She really wanted to push this as far as she could, and I remember in one of the sort of earlier conversations, way before we started shooting, when the very early conversations we had with Michelle and with Jess, Jess talked about this. Sarah was talking about the character and talked about how. Devout she was and what a true believer, and it literally, you could sort of see it click with Michelle, and I think like that was the moment that Michelle had to sort of weigh in to tell this story, that she was coming from this place where her belief in this movement superseded everything, even family, and that sort of what I think it was like one of those great things that happen when you're making TV is what the actor brings to something starts to suggest things to the writers, and and that's and kind of like so we sort of wrote toward that, and it became such I think a really important part, not only an important part about her character, but about the show.
Yeah.
I'm curious how you went about creating this religion from the ground up, so it didn't become just a Scientology spoof, and that wasn't going to be the story of the show.
Yeah. Well, as soon as we knew we were going to make a show, we had like 4 writers, and we knew it was super important to make a religion that was that was grounded. We actually wrote a Bible, so we have a Bible for for
sale.
Yeah. We sat down and we figured out, what is the story of the religion? What are the, all the things. We took all the things that you have in most religions, like an afterlife. What is sin? How do you absolve yourself of sin? We took the basic sort of roadmap that most religions have and figured out what the puzzle pieces were for Meyerism, we had to do that. We found.
Yeah.
But we culled from everything. I mean, there's a lot of Eastern religion. There's a lot of Judeo-Christian stuff in there. So it, you know, we definitely, and then stuff that we just sort of dreamed up that we thought, you know, well, you know, when I die, it would be beautiful to go to the, you know, I get, most religions have that, but so sort of a little bit of wish fulfillment.
The light sounds like a good place.
The light does, yeah.
Light.
You got about 5 minutes.
Okay, great.
That's it?
That's it.
Oh my god, I have so many more questions. I could be here for hours. Did you? This is the first time I've talked to them since I've seen the finale. Did you know where you were going with the finale when you wrote it?
You know,
Was
I
this the
own.
finale you envisioned?
You know, the one thing I knew from the beginning, I was like, Dr. Meyer's going to get up at the end. He's going to be, he's going to sit up. He's going to be walking. So I always knew that there would be that. But no, the rest of it.
Yeah, and that's always such a great thing. And you know, in a writer's room, you know, to have that though, because I feel like that is really something that I felt on you know, like on several shows, you know, when you know the point that you're getting to, even if you don't know why you're getting there exactly or how you're going to get there, it was always very, it was a very sort of grounding thing for us all to know that there, to have sort of that in mind of where we were going to.
All right, so since we don't have much more time, do you guys have any questions?
I do. First of all, I want to say thank you for creating this show. I don't mind publicly admitting that I was raised in a cult, so cult for me is like the first time I've ever seen that part of my life actually manifested on screen. So
Wow.
thank you for that.
Thank you.
The second thing, though, is a question, which is I'm wondering if there's any ideological hesitation in writing the series finale, because I feel like so much of the series was driven by Eddie, and that it was about deconstructing the theology of the cult. And then in the last episode, you kind of get the sense of, oh, well, maybe the show is saying that the light is real and the magical realism, and it kind of suggests that the theology is true instead of something that needs to be deconstructed and exposed.
Yes.
So I'm just curious if there was any, I don't know what drove that decision, if there was any ideological hesitation in going that route.
Yeah, I mean, definitely we, I mean, I love that you brought that up, but, you know, we talk about that a lot in the room, and I think where, you know, we hope to get to is another layer of the idea that perhaps there is mysticism in life, and maybe there are people who corrupt mysticism. So that is sort of a journey we're hoping to take if we go forward. So that not to say that there is none of this, but if there is it, that there are individuals who are, you know, who make it bad. You know?
And there's the other thing was it actually wasn't the series finale, it was just the season finale, and it is something that the idea of watching Eddie's journey outside of the religion and outside of the movement, I should say, is a big part of where the story is going.
Anyone else have any questions? How much is real and how much is hallucination, or is that up for us to decide for ourselves?
I guess, you know, I would say in season 1, definitely there's a, and I don't totally know what happens in season 2, but I think it's for us to decide. But there is a sense that Eddie, to me, is tapped into. I mean, I see him as the person who is tapped into something, you know. And I'm as sort of confused about whether there is anything else in the world, as many people are. But I don't, you know, I feel like the show doesn't say there isn't.
And what does Sarah know? What does she think she knows? And how much is she going to be a rival to Cal in the next season?
I think so. I think so.
And I know that you filmed this, you know, on location. How much did that lend to the show?
I mean, that's to me, that beautiful location is filmed in Nyack, and we're by the Hudson River. We're in these mountains, and I mean, you know, if you want to feel like that there's a presence of something, it's in that location. So I think it adds, like, the majesty of nature is stunning there.
Is there something that you learned from the first season of the show that's going to inform the second season?
That's a great question. What did we learn?
Well, I mean, I think one thing that we learned, which was I mean, right. I think Jess and I have both really talked about this out of the gate from the very first episode of the show was when, Mike Cahill, who directed the first two, when we saw the pilot, that the visual vocabulary of the show, the feeling, and also the tone of the show, really made us see something about what the appetite for what the show wanted to be visually, for the sort of the spirituality of it, the sort of poetry of it, and weirdness of it in a way, and the danger and all those things that felt all elements that were embedded in the script. But I think when we saw it, we felt like it was more than we ever could imagine, and I think that is something that inspired us moving forward even within season one, and I think with knowing the direction that we're starting to go to, and at the beginning of season two, even more so moving into the second season.
Did you have a question? Or no?
I guess you were speaking about Michelle Monaghan's intensity that she brought to the role, and there was something about her, like Sarah's character, that to me kind of seemed more like a villain than Cal.
Yeah.
I think because she was so self-assured, and that's really, like, that certain things scares me. So
Yeah.
what other, I guess...
It's so interesting to me because I hear that often, and I find that so interesting because, like, Cal kills someone and masturbates on someone, and Michelle is, but I guess a zealot is a very scary thing in the world, and that is, that has been something I learned, and that is definitely that's very interesting. I don't know if that what your question.
Are there other characters where you see, like, kind of different facets? Like she was saying before, that the actors came in and maybe you see them in a different light, or that could just be me seeing Sarah that way. I don't know.
Well, we definitely, like, when we found Hawk and Ashley, we were like, oh my God. Like, once we started seeing them, we were like, these kids are like the most beautiful, they are purity, they are like young love, and that was thrilling, and we started really getting into that story.
Yes.
That was a big, big discovery.
Mary,
Yeah.
again, somebody we really, where the actress was so amazing that we felt like we wrote more toward the Cal Mary and continue into the second season.
I don't think we realized that they would have like that chemistry.
That's something.
Even though they have the most twisted, horrible relationship, but the chemistry is so.
And I think that on the script stage, it felt, before we saw it, it felt, it felt too, it's so weird. On the script stage, it felt too weird to delve into that, relationship too deeply. But then seeing the two actors and what they brought to it, it seemed inevitable. So there were a lot of these characters, and then the character I always love talking about is Richard. Who started out with like one scene in the show, and by the end, in the first season becomes such an important character, and continues even more so in the second season.
I'd love to talk to you about Rockman Dunbar's character, because I think that's a whole other interesting storyline, and what happens with his daughter in the end.
Yes. Well,
How are we to interpret that?
She
asks curiously.
I guess similarly to it's that thing where if coincidence works in your favor, is it God? I guess it opens those questions of faith in a way, and how.
Yeah, I don't think we're I would say we're not. Some of those questions like that, I feel like we're not authorized to answer those questions.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Was
it?
I didn't even have.
Was it that prayer, or was it?
Right. I'm so amazed by how many people think it was the prayer, since I didn't.
Yeah.
I didn't know.
Right.
Yeah.
But I love the way that it's just a conversation.
Yes, it is. It's great. It's good.
And I love that he even throws it back to him and says, "Well, why are you praying if you don't believe?"
Yeah.
Do you think the show has a message, or you're just sort of asking the questions?
Yeah, hopefully there's conversations that come out of the show. I don't know that we're trying to say anything in particular. I just feel like the conversation about extreme faith isn't it's like in the newspaper, it's caused so many wars and countless deaths, but it isn't a conversation we have. I think people are sort of nervous to talk about that, and so I'm glad that the show raises some of that.
So I know this is the first time showrunner experience for you. How's it been?
Amazing. You know, I had Jason, and he's like the best person in the world to have as like a mentor and a guide. He's my Stephen Meyer, I guess. But, you know, so he's, you know, I feel like I had this person who, you know, instead of like putting their own thing onto the show, like always sort of finding what the best thing for the show itself was. And it's, you know, so I feel very lucky.
The other thing that I would say also the one thing that we really had on this show that was a unique experience for me in doing the first season of the show is we had a tremendous amount of time while we were initially writing the first 2 scripts and then bringing in the writers and breaking the rest of that season and writing those scripts. We had way more time than you know, I'm certainly used to having on a show, and Hulu really you know, encouraged us and gave us that, you know, the privilege of having that time, and it really put us in the position of when we did start shooting, of having, you know, the ability to, you know, be able to say to actors, you know, here's where you're going to end up, you know, this is where this is all going, and our, you know, production team and everybody, and to know ourselves, not that we didn't continue to change and adjust and as we were shooting, but it also gave us that you know, an incredible advantage. And you were talking before about, you know, how you kind of created this religion with the other writers, but part of the reason that I think we were able to do that is because we had the time. So as we were breaking, you know, later episodes, and we realized, oh, this should be part of the religion, you know, you were able to then go back and fold those into the earlier scripts, so that at the end it really, I think, did have this very kind of this feeling of just such clarity about that aspect of it. So that really made it into just, I think, a great way to just make television, you know.
Here's more of that.
Yeah.
I know that you're about to go into production in season 2, so you can give us a little tease of what to expect this season?
Well, as Jason said, Eddie is, you know, it's nice, he's like in the secular world, so we get to follow him, you know, what that's like. I mean, after he's lived in this cult for 16 years, so that's a really great story. And then of course we have this Sarah Cal trying to figure out how to run this thing together. And what else?
I think that's the first time I ever heard you say cult.
I know.
Yeah.
I know. Well, I guess because I was talking about Eddie, so I was inside his head.
Inside his head. Okay. No, right. Okay.
What else happens? Well, that's probably
Any
good.
cast members?
We have 2 new cast members. We have Levin Rambin, who I guess is maybe a person from Eddie's past, and so that'll be interesting. And then we have this guy James Remar, and he is like a sort of one of Steve's old cronies who comes in to see what's happening at the movement.
I think I've gone past my 5 minutes, please.
Thank you.
Anyone else have any other questions? Or else have any other thing? Great. Well, thank you guys.
Thank you.
Thank you guys so much. Thank you.